I am going to, the timer is, Viviana, it's going to be a still. Do you need vocal or are you good with colors? Viviana?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so a still is our timer.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, no problem. Welcome to Online Presenters. This is an amazing club. Super happy to be here. Congratulations to everyone for taking time out of their Monday night, and to all of our veterans, whether they're from the United States or wherever. Thank you for your service. I know your country appreciates you. You were right, Roger. Let's give a little round of applause. Thank you, near and far. I'm always sad when we have to actually have a day to thank a veteran and we don't do it at all of our events and things like that. So for any of you that run events and take that 2 minutes out to say, are there any veterans in the group, and have them stand up to applaud them, congratulations to you also. I appreciate all that you do. This is an international club. We just ask you to be a little sensitive to some of the cultures that are on the club. And having said that, I am going to turn it over to our Toastmaster of the day, Mr. Jim Barber. Oh, are we recording? We are recording. Just so you know, this is a recorded online presentation. So at some point, your face is going to be shown on the internet.
That's right. Anyone in the witness protection program, please don a disguise or something like that. Good evening, everybody. I'm Jim Barber. I'm your Toastmaster of the day, morning, evening, afternoon, whatever, depending upon where you are located. But I am your Toastmaster for this evening. And we've got a light turnout tonight. This is the tail end of a 3-day weekend in the States. And so I think that probably affected attendance here. And I don't know what everybody else's excuse is, but we have quality. We may be lacking quantity, but we have quality in membership. The theme of this evening's meeting, as you may have gathered by looking at everybody's pictures, is space, the final frontier. I chose that because I was thinking about online presenters and what we're doing. And basically, although there are so many things that space travel has contributed, or space exploration has contributed to our society, one of them that you may not think a lot about is that when Ralph Smedley started Toastmasters, the possibility of having members from around the world gathering at the same time to have a Toastmasters meeting wouldn't have been possible. It was inconceivable. And we could not be doing that without space exploration. Granted, the internet was not derived from space like exploration, but the internet really couldn't exist in any practical form without satellite broadcasting. And so of course, satellites, of course, make all this possible. And so that is our theme of the evening. I'm looking forward to a great evening. I've got a number of people that are participating in this. Let's start with, if we can wake her up for a moment, Asil. You're coming to us. Good morning. Could you please explain what your duties as the timer are?
Fellow Toastmasters, I'll be serving as your timer today to monitor time for 3 sessions: prepare speeches, table topics, and speech evaluation. I have 3 colors to show. Green at minimum time, yellow target time, and red maximum time. If you need an audible cue, Viviana I'm going to give Viviana an audible cue. And also, if you go over 30 seconds, I would say gently and quietly, ding, ding. Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Asil. You can go back to sleep now, for a few moments anyway. Our counter this evening is Andy Byrne. Andy, what will you be doing?
The purpose of the counter is to listen carefully to everything that everyone is saying, to see if you use bridge words. Those are the crutch words that you use, such as you know, so, double clutches, and lip smack, start overs, and kind of knows, and a few other things. But basically they're crutch words, and I will be listening to see who is using them, starting now.
Thank you very much, Andy. Our grammarian this evening indicated that this is a challenge for her because English is not her first language, and that's why we're all here at Online Presenters. So I think this is a wonderful opportunity, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you're going to do with the role. Joy, what will you be doing this evening? Nope, you're muted.
I will be focusing on good use of English and interesting words, and also counting how many times and who is using the word of the day, explore. And I already heard that Jim used the form of that word twice. Well done.
Thank you. It helps when I came up with the word of the day. John Callahan, you are our watcher this evening. Would you please explain to anyone who might have short-term memory problems exactly what the watcher does?
The watcher is unique to our online club, and we're looking at how do we come across on camera? Are we reasonably centered in the screen? Are we off to the side and hanging out? Are we up too high, down too low? And what does our background look like? Is it distracting from our message versus adding to it? That's what I'll be doing tonight.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. Our chat monitor this evening. I'm going to do something here that I prefer not to do, but Rolando, we need a chat monitor, and Roger was double dutying, and I hate to do that to him. Would you be willing to step up at the very last minute and be our chat monitor for this evening?
Sure.
I appreciate that. Would you please tell everybody what you'll be doing?
Of course. As a watcher, as a chat monitor, I'll be monitoring the chat, of course, watching for any report issue, and I provide a report at the end of the meeting. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, sir. And finally, our vote counter this evening is Sakishore. Sakishore, what will you be doing?
Hello, everyone. As the name suggests, I would be counting the votes for all the three sections: prepared speeches, evaluations, and table topics. And I'll give my report just before the end of the meeting for the results. Back to you, Toastmaster of the day.
Thank you very much, Sakishore. Are you going to be using a calculator or a slide rule?
I'm an engineer,
That didn't answer my question. I'm an engineer too. I use a slide rule.
I'm going to use my brain.
Ah! You are not an engineer.
I was going to say, I thought you said you were an engineer.
All right. I think I covered everybody. I think we are set to go. So let's do it. Our first speaker this evening, this is a little bit different presentation. As some of you may know, we had our humorous speech contest several weeks ago, and one of our contestants was not able to participate due to technical difficulties. He's going to be participating this evening. So this is Tiger's presentation for the speech contest that was held several weeks ago. It is intended to entertain, so sit back, relax, and enjoy a tall tale which takes place in the Alaskan wilderness a long, long time ago. Take it away, Tiger.
My story takes place so long ago that it happened before Jim Barber even joined Toastmasters. 1975, I was 19 years old, and I trusted my grandfather with my life. That was my first mistake. You see, my grandfather was a short Scotsman, but he liked to tell tall tales. And he told me a story about a place in Alaska, in the wilderness, the land of the midnight sun, a cannery where they caught fish bigger than people, where there were large fishing vessels and Eskimos that worked tirelessly and liked to laugh. And then he looked at me very seriously. Laddie, The Eskimos, they don't much care for the white man, but they're gonna love you. Well, the next thing I know, I'm off to explore the frontier that is Alaska. I arrive in the Anchorage airport and I'm greeted by a very large bearded man. Where are you from? I'm from Portland, Oregon. City boy. Well, I spent the next 3 hours with this man in an old rickety Cessna airplane flying over nothing but tundra and ocean. He broke the silence by saying, well, city boy, how do you like your new home? And just to make sure I could see, he turned the plane and pasted my face into the window. And as I looked down, I saw nothing but a few small buildings on a river in the middle of nowhere. Ain't no shopping malls down there, city boy. Ain't no purty women neither. Well, we landed on a dirt airstrip and he escorted me up to the chow hall where I got to meet Eskimo Joe, who was to be my boss. Hi, my name's Tiger. Cat. You cat, eat fish. And he gave me some filleted salmon, which was excellent. What I didn't know at the time was this was going to be the first of about 300 meals of fish in a row. You see, Eskimos eat nothing but fish in the summer. Baked, fried, barbecued, smoked, raw salmon eggs. Now, you may call it a caviar. I call it, ugh. My first day on the job, Eskimo Joe gave me an extensive training session. He handed me a very large knife with a curve, pointed at a fish about as large as I was, and said, cut fish. So for the next 20 hours or so, I cut fish. It's getting on 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. I look around and I notice nobody's going to bed. I was exhausted, so I crawled up in a corner and I crashed. Several hours later, I was awoken rather rudely. Cat nap. Cut fish. Well, about the third day I was there, a very large vessel pulled into the port. This was called a scow, and it was designed to do nothing else except transport large amounts of fish, tons of fish, in this case, king salmon. Eskimo Joe led me out to the dock. It was cold. It was raining. And he handed me this implement that looked like a push broom with a piece of wood at the end. He then jumped down into the bow of the boat, up to his neck in dead fish, and started to push. And he looked at me and ushered me into the boat. Well, I crawled down into the fish and started to push. After a while, I got pretty good at this, and I was thinking, you know what? I can be a professional fish pusher. And then all of a sudden, off the top of the pile came a 200-pound monster, and as it went flying by my head, its tail slapped me and knocked me down into the bottom of the boat, into nothing but fish guts and blood. And I hear, funny cat, ha ha. Well, as I lay there, obviously I was a little embarrassed, but I couldn't help but start laughing. I got up, my face dripping with fish blood. I reached over, I grabbed my implement, and I went back to pushing fish. So, you may ask, what did Tiger learn from this experience? First of all, never trust your grandfather. No, that's not the main point. Well, that was one of the main points. The moral of the story is, no matter how hard life slaps you down, you got to get up and you got to keep pushing. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Tiger. It was definitely worth waiting for. Our second speaker this evening is Carol Prahinsky. In honor of Veterans Day, our speaker will share a story, And They All Cheered, written by her late father, who was a major in the U.S. Air Force. Although Art Prahinsky navigated cargo planes in 2 wars, the Korean War and the Vietnam War, he would say, "I didn't fight in those wars. I served the people who fought in those wars." Please join me in welcoming Carol Prahinsky.
Thank you, Jim. And They All Cheered by Art Prahinsky. By the time I was 10, which was before World War II ended, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I'd join the Navy. Well, maybe the Army. I would be a fighter pilot and shoot down more Japs than anybody. Maybe I'd be a bomber pilot and be sent on a secret mission to destroy the undisclosed underground German factory. I would save England. When I came home, there'd be a ticker tape parade, and then they would all cheer. Well, the war ended, and I was happy it was over, but they didn't need pilots anymore. I hadn't become a hero. I hadn't gotten my parade, and they didn't all cheer. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I was to be a football star, win the biggest, most important game, and they would all cheer. Well, things always work out, but they don't always work out the way you planned. I got to high school and went to the football tryouts. To start my football career, the guys were bigger, stronger, and faster than me, but that wasn't going to stop me. I was stopped by Coach Kozak. He cut me. The next year, I went to the football camp. I worked hard, and I was a lot better. I thought I had a good chance of making the team. But there was still an obstacle in my way. That was Coach Kozak. Well, at least Coach Kramer learned something about last year. I made the JV team and played almost every game. I was both offensive and defensive guard and the kicker. Once I was running down the sidelines at full speed. The crowd was at their feet and they were all cheering. It was wonderful until I got back to the huddle. And then somebody told me they weren't cheering for me. They were cheering for the other guy, the one I didn't catch. He had just scored a touchdown. Nobody cheers for guards or kickers. In the summer, between my sophomore and junior year of high school, it was my mother who kept saying, "Get a job, get a job." And when I came back each day, she would say, "How was your job search? Where did you look?" And I would explore through the summer trying to find a job, but I kept coming back with negative reports. I continued my search through July and August with no results. After about this time, the football camp was starting, and I was sure I was going to make the team this year. I went to the first practice, and it was looking good. But dutifully, on the way home, I stopped by the local hardware store, that's Chevy Chase Hardware, to ask one more time whether they had a job. And I was hired. I didn't have time for football. Nobody cheered. Dreams of cheers and parades, well, they faded and were forgotten. During high school, the Korean War started. Again, the Air Force needed pilots and navigators. Just before my graduation, they eliminated a requirement that aviation cadets have 2 years of college. Now, all I had to do was finish my senior year and pass their test. In the summer after graduation, I took that test and passed. I arrived in early June. Life as an aviation cadet was everything I'd heard and was afraid of. There were 2 or 3 upperclassmen simultaneously screaming questions, each of which required the recitation of different memorized answers. On the first day, new cadets were lined up by height. The first 60 recruits were assigned to Alpha Squadron. The second 60 went to Bravo Squadron. I was short at 5'6", so I was assigned to the Delta Squadron. Somebody even had the nerve to call us the Pygmy Squadron. One day, we realized that we were needing to pay attention to the SOB. That is the Mr. Morton, who was an upperclassman. His title actually stood for Sergeant of Beautification, SOB. Now, don't let his title confuse you. He was an SOB who assigned garden projects like whitewashing the rocks and pebbles surrounding the barracks. He loved his job, but I don't think he liked me. Well, now that I was an aviation cadet, I wondered whether I could survive pre-flight training. On the 4th of July, I learned that I would survive or not survive aviation school. There was no inspection, no classes, but it was field day. We didn't even know what a field day was. The pre-flight school had 3 cadet groups. Each group had 4 squadrons, and each squadron had about 120 cadets. That's nearly 1,500 cadets. And we were all going to have to prove who was the best. That's a field day. So from early morning until late afternoon, the day was filled with athletic competitions. Each event was predetermined point value for first and second place. No points were given for third place. Each cadet was going to prove that his or her group he was able to win the best. So athletic skills and the spirit of the cadets were extraordinarily high. Many cadets had competed in college. One Delta classmate of mine had competed for first place on the U.S. Olympics diving team. Although he won his event, he was challenged. All cadets had participated, whether they were volunteered or that they actually volunteered for the event. When they weren't in competition, they were in the stands as spectators. This morning's events were the long-established Olympic type, such as track and field, swimming, diving, touch football. Cadets cheered loudly each time the chalk tally was updated. By lunch, despite the huge number of events, scores were nearly equal among the 3 cadet groups. The afternoon events were picnic and fair competitions designed for kids, such as egg throwing, 3-legged wheelbarrow, stretcher bearer, and sack races. At first, these events seemed childish, but as the competition heated up, so did the competitive nature of the cadets. When the tally board was updated, cheers grew even louder than they had been in the morning. Cadets were more excited as the scores continued to climb higher and higher and higher. Surprisingly, however, the scores were nearly even. I don't remember all of the afternoon events, but I will never forget when the SOB found me. It was late. He said another event had just been added. It was the relay race. It would be the last event of the day, and he was in charge of our team, and I was on the team, and we had better win. Mr. Morton got the team together. He told us more details. It was a sack race. 6 members of the team, 3 on each send, 35-yard leg. The sack would be exchanged after each leg and before the next hopper could start. First place was 6 points. Second place was 3. He said, does anybody have an experience in sack racing? Yeah, sure, I said under my breath with sarcasm. I wasn't in earshot, but I was wrong. Mr. Morton heard something and he said, what did I just hear? I was obliged then to tell him, well, when I was 10, I won the sack race at the playground on the July 4th weekend. Well, that was all he needed. Mr. Morton announced, victory is assured because Cadet Perhinsky is going to be our anchor. Surely a great sack race champion like Perhinsky wouldn't let our group lose. I was pretty sure he didn't really believe what he had just said, but I knew that if our team didn't win, there would be a price to pay, especially by me. As we got close to the race, I felt the pressure. It couldn't be worse. Again, I was wrong. Just then the tally board was updated. All events for the day except the sack race were included. Our group was still ahead, but only by 2 points. The winner of the relay race would be the winner of the field day. By now, all 1,500 cadets, except for those in the race, were up in the stands. and awaiting the outcome of the final event to see the results of their day's efforts. The race was on. At first, it was not any different from any of the other events of the day. And our first hopper came towards us. He was slightly ahead. The sack was exchanged, and our team was well established as the leader. We continued to hold the lead, and by the time the hopper 4 cleared the sack exchange, our lead was even more substantial. I felt Mr. Morton's pressure lifting. I was at the opposite end of this track, so I could not see what happened, but the sack exchange between hopper 4 and hopper 5 did not go well. A lot of our lead was lost. However, the 5th hopper was still ahead when he started towards me. Then it happened. He fell. I was close enough to see the look of despair that came over his face as the racers of the teams passed him. I yelled for him to keep trying. My adrenaline was up. As soon as we exchanged the sack, I was off. The other 2 teams were about even with one another, but they were at least 15 yards ahead of us in the 35-yard leg. All caution was gone. I leaned forward and lost my balance. Oh my God. Now, if I didn't keep hopping fast, I was going to fall. I got into a rhythm and continued to hop, 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 hop. Even I was surprised at how fast the gap was closing, but I wasn't sure whether the race would ever be over before I caught them, or whether I would just fall flat on my face. I just kept hopping. The next thing surprised me. Even though I had known it was going to happen since I was 10, the entire corps of 1,500 cadets were on their feet and they were cheering for me the next morning, July 5th, 05:30. I even got my parade. I was in formation that day. Mr. Morton and several other upperclassmen were waiting for me. Mr. Morton declared I was now officially the rabbit. I think that was good. He and the other upperclassmen congratulated me on the race. I guess he wasn't such a bad SOB after all. So that was my greatest of the July 4th. As I said, things don't always work out exactly as you planned, but they all cheered and I got my parade. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Carol. That was a wonderful remembrance of your dad.
Mr. Toastmaster, my apologies.
That's quite all right. I've been called worse.
Thank you, Jim.
Our third speaker this evening she is there. Okay. Hi, Viviana.
Hi.
She was called away. Are you back?
Yes, I'm back.
Okay. Our third speaker this evening is Viviana Wedhaha. Let's see. She is speaking from the Effective Coaching Level 1, Mastering Fundamentals, Research and Presenting. The title of her presentation is Personal Change. Please help me welcome Viviana Wedhaha. Take it away, Viviana.
Hello, fellow online presenters. How do we navigate through change? I'm a kind of person who is very hard to change. What do you think? My mentor in Mitibird, Svetlana, said gently and repetitively, you need to change, Viviana. And one of my evaluators, Asil, she is here. Sorry, Viviana, you couldn't meet the objective of your speech and you need to change. And today, our lives have an increasing amount of stability, transition, and cynicism about the future. How do we adapt to change, especially if we were born as Generation X in the 60s, 70s, or 80s? So, as I wonder how I can change myself, I'm interested in the process of change. And I explore and would like to share my research about a personal change. So I have this book, Introducing NLP. And there is a model of personal change introduced by Robert Field in this book. And I also read the journal from International Journal of Coaching in Organization by Frederick Hudson. Frederick Hudson shared new rules to empower people to change in the 21st century. Now let's explore the six level of change by Robert Field. So level number 1 is environment. Change your environment. Level number 2 is change your behavior. And level number 3 is change your capability. 4 is change your belief. 5, change your identity. And 6, change your purpose. So among these levels, which one is the easier? Anyone? Change the environment. Therefore, I joined Toastmasters to change the environment. Surrounded by people who aim to be public speakers. And so, if change the environment sometimes can support change your behavior and change your capabilities as well. And now I have another question. Which one of these 6 can accelerate change fast?
Purpose.
Yes, correct. Change at the highest level, like the purpose. So you can change your behavior and capability faster. Sometimes people ask me, are you a public speaker? I still hesitate. No, I'm not yet. I still need to work on my belief to support my behavior and capabilities. Now we have learned the 6 model of change by Robert Field. Now we move to how we can change in the 21st century. Oops. Now we live between eras. I was born in the 20th century. The model in the 20th century was stable. Look at my phone. This is the phone from the 20th century. So before year 2000. It never changed. It lasts long. And now I have to live in the 21st century. The model is rapid change driven. Look at my phone. I cannot use it forever. I need to change every 2-3 years. And people said 21st century is who covered volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and
Agree.
And now let me introduce the new rules that introduced by Frederick Hudson. There is a cyclical rule and continuous rule. So our life consists of small units or many chapters. There is a beginning and the end. So if every victories and defeats at the end will be the new beginning of another chapter. So we can have our dreams and plans, and we can anticipate tomorrow, make reflection and adjustment to have a better chapter. And our life is a continuous change from young adulthood to elderhood.
Yellow.
And also the new rules inside out. So what we have inside is our core values, our capabilities. We contribute to outside, our family, workplace, humanity, community, and become a good citizen. And the last one is learning is not only for children. In the 21st century, learning is for everyone. And digital age, we can learn almost everything. So learning is a positive change. And I have shared the six level of personal change and 3 new rules from Frederick Hudson. I hope that you can benefit from sharing today. So as I tend to be a serious person, I need to change my serious attitude. And let's see. Thank you.
You're still muted, Jim.
Jim, unmute yourself.
I knew that. I was just checking to see if anybody was paying attention. 3 great speakers this evening by 3 great presenters. Madam Timer Asil, would you please unmute yourself and tell us, did all of our speakers qualify for voting?
Only Carol not qualified.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then if you would please, Asil, when you get the opportunity, if you could post the times in the chat room, and would everybody else please pass your votes via private chat to our vote counter this evening, Sakashore, between our 2 speakers that qualified, Tiger and Viviana. And Sakashore is eagerly waiting for your votes. While you are doing that, it is now my pleasure to introduce our topics master de jour, the inimitable Elaine Nieberding. Elaine, take it away.
Being called inimitable, dear Toastmaster of the Day, James Barber, I'm gonna have to explore some even vaster territories than I have before. Greetings, fellow Toastmasters. Listen carefully. Here's the first question. Exploring space anew, which of the following trips would you take and why? And in this case, physical survivability is not an issue. The first is taking a one week round trip from Earth to visit the International Space Station, taking a trip into inner space of your heart to heal all of your unconscious wounds, or taking a trip via virtual reality device to Mars. John Callahan, which trip would you like to take and why? To the space station, an inner space trip to heal, or a virtual reality trip to Mars?
Madam Table Topics Master, which trip would I take? They all sound really interesting. I think there's potential in each of them. The space station would be fascinating. That would be really enjoyable to look down on the Earth. An inner heart journey? That sounds intriguing as well. And virtual reality to Mars? I think I could do that anyway. You know, there's probably a program out there that I could load onto my computer, and that one doesn't excite me too much. The space station does, but that inner heart journey, that's got a lot of potential, because not only because we've lived so long, there's definitely wounds to be healed. There's no question about that. But there's also things that you could learn down there as well. So some very deep meditation that goes on for weeks on end. That sounds like it might be an interesting journey. I don't know what kinds of things I would uncover in my psyche, though. There's probably some things down there that don't really need to be explored. But I will explore them nonetheless and report back after our next meeting. Madam Table Topics Master.
Thank you so much, John. I appreciate your having the courage to take an inner journey like that. Now, Alan Shepard, who was the first American to travel into space in 1961, and in 1971, who became one of the 12 Americans to have set foot on the moon, Alan Shepard said, "When I first looked back at the Earth standing on the moon, I cried. Tricia Smith, if put yourself in Alan Shepard's shoes, what could have triggered that welling up looking back at Earth? Unmute, Tricia.
Thank you. Yeah, good timing. I had some visitors here with me during the rest of the meeting, so thank goodness it's nice and quiet right now. I like the first question better. So with Alan Shepard, he sounds very experienced, though. That wasn't his first trip where he cried, but maybe he reached another plateau in his personal endeavors. You know, he felt like he had more of a purpose and seeing something so vast. I'm looking at your background even, Elaine, and I can just imagine what it looked like from the moon looking down at the Earth, you know, just with all the colors and it's like a piece of art. Like you can't fathom it, like the creation of it and just the span of it. And it's more than man-made, or you can't acknowledge it because it's not human. So, for me, that would be overwhelming. I would like to hear his explanation of it. But yeah, so I wish I could experience that someday. Maybe my grandchildren.
Thank you so much, Tricia. At the rate things are evolving rapidly, that may become more common than we think. The next question. Looking up at a star-filled clear night sky can be a unique and personal experience. Joy, tell us what comes to mind when you think about the vastness of outer space, or when you had a vivid experience looking up at the sky.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Table topics mistress. I think I probably have same kind of feeling that Alan Shepard had when looking down on the earth, that how small we are and how vulnerable we are. Because when we are living our everyday lives here on the earth, we often feel very important, and our lives are so important, and our time is so important, and we don't have the big perspectives. But when you are looking up and you are seeing all these other planets and stars, then you get this feeling that maybe there is other life forms or other kind of creatures out there, and they are maybe equally ego-centered as we are. And we think that we are something very special in this universe. That's what I feel when I'm looking up to the stars. And I would never like to study astronomy or anything because it scares me so much what you can find out there. It makes me feel so little in so many ways. Back to you, Mrs. Table Topics Master.
Thank you so much, Joy. Indeed, finding ourselves amidst this vastness, it's something to consider. Our next question. If you had everything at your disposal to visit the far side of the moon, and when you got there, you discover it was actually a landing station for trade between interstellar civilizations, Rolando, and if you noticed, once on the far side of the moon, that you had mind-to-mind communication with the first being that you encountered. Take it away with an imaginary experience on the far side of the moon.
Thank you, Madam Table Topic Master, fellow Toastmasters, most welcome guests. First encounter with a possible alien being. Wow. What will I do? Well, first thing, I'll try to communicate somehow, trying to get to know, is it a him? Is it a her? is it what? No, I mean, how do I determine what am I dealing with? How am I gonna converse and be able to get something out of he or she or whatever it is? We're still debating whether there's life out there. And I feel like I'm convinced that there has to be something out there. People we talk about Area 51, and we talk about all those conspiracy theory going on. There has to be something out there beside us, because I'm thinking that even with all the advances that we did technology-wise, and there's a lot more that we can go. And I think that there are maybe, if I could talk to those beings out there that may be more advanced than us, then we can learn from them, and maybe we will be able to do things to save our planet from climate change and from the way that we destroy our planet, and be able to take a cue from them so we can live a better life. Back to you, Madam Table Topic Master.
Thank you, Ronaldo. Indeed, getting some insight from higher, more advanced perspectives about addressing our own climactic challenges. What a grand idea. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster of the Day, Jim Barber.
Thank you, Elaine Nieberding. Those were great table topics questions, and those were fascinating responses by our various table topics victims. Asil, would you please post the times at your leisure? And before that, is there anyone who is disqualified from voting?
Everyone qualified. Thank you, Mr.
Outstanding. Thank you. Then would you please cast your vote for your favorite table topics response to our vote counter this evening, Sarka Shore. And with that, my portion of this evening is pretty much done. I'm happily going to turn control of pretty much the rest of the meeting to our general evaluator this evening, Roger Fung. Take it away, Roger.
Thank you very much, Mr. Toastmaster. Let's give Jim a round of applause for leading us and exploring into not only outer space, but into our minds and inner hearts and every place in between. We will begin our evaluation portion of our meeting first off from our prepared speakers. The three prepared speakers have done an excellent job, and let's hear what the evaluator has to say, what they did well, and maybe a few things they could improve upon. Our first evaluator is Graham. Give us some feedback on Tiger's speech. Graham, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, and particularly Tiger, or Cat, perhaps. First up, let me say, I think that this was a great series of stories. The thing that I wrote down first, with a big exclamation mark next to it, is great stories. Lovely vocal and facial expression. One of the things that I enjoyed most about Tiger's presentation tonight was the fact that he was getting not only his hands and his body involved, but his face in particular. When he was, for example, in a plane that was tipped on its side, and he shoved his face up against the window. I thought that was particularly effective. I also loved the repetition of things like cat, fish, cat, nap, cat, push, push, fish. I thought that worked really well, and his suggestion that he might one day be able to become a professional fish pusher. We have strange aspirations, I have to tell you. Now, there are a couple of things that I would suggest for Tiger. One of them is, and this is not the first time that I've seen this speech. I've seen it presented at a different club, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But one of the things that was mentioned there was that one member felt uncomfortable with the use of the term Eskimo, because I think the preferred term amongst Inuit people is Inuit rather than Eskimo. The way that Tiger could have got around that was saying, back in 1975 or whatever year it was, and my uncle referred to all people from the north as being Eskimos, and that's the way they referred to themselves at the time. Things may have changed now. That would only add an extra 10 seconds in there, but it means that your audience feels less uncomfortable about that. The other thing that I would suggest for Tiger, yeah, and it may be a same issue with me, is that because he was a fair way away from his microphone, it was very echoey, very boomy. So, Tiger, if you can stick a second microphone in, if you're going to be standing well away from the camera, which you were to get the physical displays in, then have a second microphone a little closer to you so that it works better. But I mentioned that this is not the first time I have seen this speech. And one of the things that I really liked about this speech was the fact that Tiger had taken some of the suggestions that were made to him in the evaluation of this speech the first time and added them in. For example, he went for a laugh much earlier with his, "That was my first mistake, trusting my grandfather." And that got a laugh. I was looking to see the reaction, and it got a laugh from about half the people here. So well done on picking up on the ideas that were suggested to you. I loved in particular the incredibly evocative storytelling and the willingness to adapt. So congratulations, Tiger, on a great series of stories, something that made us all feel like we were there. Keep working on the repetition, things like catfish, cat, nap, and the vocal and facial expressions. You did those particularly well. I commend you. And I'd like to see you do this in another club as a humorous speech, if you get the chance. Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Graham. As we continue to explore the details and steps of how to improve on our various speeches, let's turn to our second evaluator, David, working off Carol's speech. David, take it up.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator, and thank you, Carol, for an opportunity to evaluate this speech. This was an engagingly told, engaging story. So thank you for helping us explore your father's story with you. You had excellent eye contact throughout. Now, I think this was something with some of the other interpretive reading projects you'd done where we thought you were reading too much or we saw you reading too much. You may have been reading, but you kept up the illusion. So whatever you did, keep doing it in terms of these projects. Now, it might be because you know the story really well. My understanding is that this is your father's story, but you've been working with him on turning it into a book. And when you're reading something that is somebody else's story, I guess you're not responsible for every component of that story, but as a speaker, you are responsible for selecting the section to excerpt, to use, to present here, and for introducing and setting it up. So one of the things that I stumbled over, and I'm not really sure whether this was your presentation or my listening skills, because I lost track at some point because I thought he went off to war. He was a pilot, and then he came back and nobody cheered, and then suddenly he's in high school. And so I lost something in there. I think you were talking maybe about his fantasies as a young boy, that he was going to go out and fight in the Pacific Theater, live out the war movies that he'd seen, and so somewhere in there I got bollocksed up. And I think the story became more linear and seemed to move forward more clearly when he was going through high school, the football stories, and then trying to get a job and going off to the academy. But the real story here was the academy story. That was the most vivid part of it. The other, I think the football story was also pretty good, but the really engaging part was getting in to the academy and, being picked on by the SOB, and later learning that the SOB wasn't such an SOB perhaps. But the whole field day story is very engaging. I loved your presentation of the sack race. I wanted to hop, 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 hop. So very well told very vivid storytelling in that section. I mean, overall, I think it was well done, and you've improved on some of the technical details that you wanted to from previous speeches. Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, David. Our next evaluator, Lois, is going to round out our feedback portion on the third speaker, Viviana. Lois, please take it away.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator, my fellow Toastmasters, and most especially Viviana. It is so nice to have you back. It's been a long time, and I forgot how much I enjoyed your stories and how you wove the speech into an educational piece. I thought this was a really good speech in the fact that you had a lot of information packed into it. Might have been a little bit too much information, but you know what? I enjoyed it. I like the fact that you stood. That is a difficult technique, and I thought you did a good job with it. You might want to consider for the future getting a clicker so that you don't have to keep running over and changing the screens. That might help you feel more comfortable, because just when you got into your pose, you had to run up and change the screen. But that part didn't distract too much. I mean, I was okay with that. My favorite part was your telephone comparison. If you had gone back even farther, let's see, if you had the big phone, then you could have had the brick phone if you could have found a picture of that one. I don't know if anybody remembers that. You had a big old bag you put on your shoulder. And then, of course, there was the cell phone. So I enjoyed looking at those comparisons. I thought you did a good job with that. I specifically like the phrase that learning is for everyone. You should never stop learning, and that adult learning is positive change, because I so believe that we need to continuous learn, and I appreciate you bringing that to the forefront. Some of the things you might want to consider for the future that might make this a little bit stronger. Well, first of all, the clicker. Second of all, I would also consider breaking up your screens. There was a lot of information on that screens, and I've heard somewhere that you should only have a few words per screen. And that screen with the International Journal of Coaching, where you had the 6 items, the environment, the behavior, the purpose, the belief, the identity, capabilities, that was fabulous. That would have made, I love your cat, Carol, that would have made 6 great screens. And then you could have focused a little bit on each one with maybe a picture so that we would remember those screens. And lastly, something was going on with your screens that we were getting all this gray shading. And so I will defer you to David and Roger and John to figure out what happened. But I was trying to write down what those 6 items were from the Journal of Coaching, and a lot of them were getting grayed out as you moved. And then if you moved away, I caught another word, you'd move in and it would turn gray. So you can watch the video and see why it did that. And maybe Roger or David can give you some ideas of, was it something because you were standing? Is it the type of green screen, the background? I don't know, but overall, I am very happy to have you back. I enjoyed the information. I learned quite a bit. And I thank you for giving us a very nice research presentation. Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you so very much. Let's take a look from, or hear from our timer and see how our 3 evaluators did. Madam Timer?
Everyone is qualified, Mr. General Evaluator. Thank you.
Excellent. All 3 evaluator qualifies for time. Their time detail is in the chat box. Please go ahead and pick your favorite best evaluator for this evening and send it to our vote counters. Sure. Let's continue on with the various areas that we want to look at. And first off, let's go over to Andy, our R counter. How did we do, Andy?
Thank you very much, Roger. The overall structure of the meeting was excellent. It wasn't until the last half when people started to, I guess, get tired that the ums and so's, start overs, and ands came out. But overall, most people did very well.
Thank you, Andy. Continuing on to our next role would be grammarian. Madam Grammarian Joy, please, what did you hear tonight?
Yeah, thank you. The words and sentences that resonated with me or attracted my attention were Jim's tail end of a 3-day weekend. I have not heard that before. And then, of course, tigers, catfish, and cat push. And I loved the picture that he used, face dripping with fish blood. It was very powerful. And then Carol's memorized answers and pygmies. I never heard that before. And I love the word beautification. It's such a beautiful word. And then also the relay race and exchange the sack were words that I have never heard before. Then Jim's amenable. I don't know what it means, but it sounds really excellent. I have to check it in the Google Translator later. And then I liked very much Elaine's landing station for interstellar civilizations. I could see it in front of me, how it looks like. And then Rolando used some very common words like save our planet, but they were so positive that I really loved those. Graham's evocative storytelling. I've never heard that adjective together with storytelling. It's very good. Then one word about this political correctness, because English words, they typically don't have much emotional value to me. And words like Eskimo and ice cream, Eskimo and, Eskimo. It's a very positive word because we had an ice cream in Finland that was called Eskimo when I grew up. And we also had some chocolate that was called Negro Kiss. And I mean, it's politically very incorrect, but it's so positive for me. And then finally, David used a word balanced up. I don't know what it means, but it sounds very good. So that's my report on those. And then I only heard Jim to use the word explore in the form exploration. Oh, Carol, so you used also it. Sorry, I missed it.
Thank you, Joy. Well, let's move over to Mr. John. And what did you see, John?
I saw Graham was a great example today of when you don't want to be on center. He's off slightly to the side so that you see the lunar landing module beside him there. So that's a great example of when you don't need to be on center. Rolando, your forehead was cut off for probably half of the meeting. I hope that didn't hurt too much, but you were cut off from right about there. And Tiger, I would have loved to have seen your speech a little bit up close more. You were so far back. I know you needed to get the big gestures out, but there had to be another way to do that. That would be perfect for an in-person speech, but an online one, we need you a little bit closer to the camera in order to really make out the mannerisms that you were coming off with. Carol, you did something that is, I consider one of the big sins of a green screen. You used a water bottle that's transparent, and it kind of creates, if you saw the movie Predator years ago, it creates this kind of a weird fade in out sort of effect versus a solid cup. You can't see through it, and the green screen doesn't mess things up. But a clear water bottle on a green screen never works well. That's what I've got for tonight.
Thank you, John, for catching those finer details in all of our speeches. Thank you. Let's see what we've done in the chat box. Also, Rolando, what did you catch in the chat boxes?
Sure, Mr. General Evaluator. I noticed several people welcoming me back. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be back. And also, a lot of people enjoying the background as far as our wallpapers. A lot of people have a nice background. And many people like the stories of on the speeches, like on Tiger's speech and Carol speech, a lot of good stories. They enjoy the stories. And Viviana's speech, they enjoy the body language and the slides. So great comments on all the two speeches. Back to you, Mr. Junior Evaluator.
Thank you, Rolando. Excellent. Good feedback from everybody. I just have a few more I want to add on. Number one, and this is more of a suggestion and challenge to everybody. When Tiger did one part where he talked about how the fish tail hit his head and he went out of the frame. Now, that's very appropriate, I think. But my challenge to everybody, not negative, but challenge is, how do we explore using the frame in online speaking? This is something we usually say, hey, want to keep it in frame, keep it in frame, keep it in frame. Well, there might be some possibility and some spot of your speeches that going off the frame may be appropriate. So I'm challenging everybody in your next few speeches, just think about, hey, is there a spot where actually moving out of the frame will make that speech even better? That's point number one. Point number two, a finer point mentioned by Lois and also John about the whole idea of all the flashing issues and the like, is the issue of lighting. Because whenever you start moving, you got different reflection of light. Once you have different reflection, the computer cannot really read all the detail. Therefore, going back to Viviana, I believe, and tell me if I'm wrong, Viviana, you were using the virtual background to change the screen. Your speech, if you're going to keep it exactly the same, you may want to go with PowerPoint instead, so that you're doing screen sharing and you're going away from the whole back and forth lighting issue, and you're just clicking from one slide to another in that regard. Number three, when we are not speaking and you need to go off and do something, maybe adjusting something, it is best to go ahead and turn off your video and do whatever you need to do and adjust and then come back. Also, it is best that when you go off and if you need to come back or plan to come back at the end of the speech. Because every time you click off like this and click back on, the placement will change. So if I am the speaker and I'm staring at one corner where a cell was as the timer and somebody click off and click back in, all of a sudden, whoop, she just moved somewhere else because of that. So it's best to think of it just like in competition. You walked out the door. All right, wait until the next speaker have already completed before you enter back into the room. Do it the same with visual. With that, let me turn the meeting. Oh, actually, no. I'm going to ask our vote counter to see if he is ready to announce all the winners for this evening.
Thank you, Gentle Evaluator. After our Toastmaster of the day introduced me and asked me the question, I did explore all the methods of counting. First, I went on with this calculator, and then I thought I would use this calculator, but no, I finally used my brain and I have the results. The Best Speaker Award goes to Toastmaster Tiger for his speech. The Best Table Topic Speaker today is Toastmaster John Callaghan. And finally, the Best Evaluator is Toastmaster Graham Keynes. Congratulations to all of them, and all the qualified contestants, all the qualified people got at least one vote, so that's great. Back to the Gentle Evaluator.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vote Counter. And Jim, I still love you for not using your brain. That's perfectly fine. Let me turn the meeting back to our president, Madam Lois. All yours.
Thank you, sir. This was a fabulous meeting. I love the fact that we all have our identity showing in our screens. It makes it really nice to look around from one to the next. Great job, Jim, on picking a theme for the day. I'm not sure. Tiger, did you pick a theme for next week yet?
I have not. I'm open to suggestions.
Does anybody know what's happening next week? Well, we're getting close to Thanksgiving, so we can certainly do something with Thanksgiving.
I think it's National Nudity Day.
It can be National Nudity Day, but I was once told you should imagine your audience imagine your audience nude. Looking here, I'm sorry, not going to happen.
Well, we'll throw you some ideas, Tiger. I just want to thank all of our veterans again. We have our speechathon on the 30th. Roger, can you give us a quick mini update about it?
Sure. I'm sure you got nothing better to do on Thanksgiving weekend, so why not come and join us on Saturday in the afternoon? We start at 12:30 with the warm-up room, Eastern time, and we'll start the meeting at 1 p.m. We have 3 very special speeches. Number 1, we have Antoinette working off on already level 5. She's working on a level 5 project. So come and join and check out what she's going to be doing. Joy is going to do a special kind of panel discussion. What she's trying to do is to get them to agree to something. Now, if we pull 4 or 5 of us in this room, you know we're not going to agree on anything, but guess what she's trying to pull? She's trying to get them to agree on whether we have the right for suicide, to put our own life away. Talk about being politically correct or incorrect. So mark your calendar on the 30th, and our third speaker, Nick, is going to come and have a challenging question on a panel discussion about what is better in terms of marketing our clubs or various different Toastmasters clubs, internet or face-to-face. Now, these 3 speeches, especially the 2 longer speeches, is something that we usually don't have time for in our regular meeting. So I encourage all of you to come and join us, and we will have some fun. Back to you, Madam President.
All right. Thank you, Roger. Is that 1 p.m. Eastern time or Central time?
1 p.m. Eastern.
1 p.m. Eastern. Okay, sounds fascinating. I'm going to try and be on that call. I have to check a couple of things, but I'm looking forward to it. Very, very interesting stuff. I put some information about Christian's book club out last week. I didn't know if anybody had any questions about it. If so, you can contact Christian direct, but it looks to be a good group, and I like the fact that it's private. Tiger is our Toastmaster of the day next week. Carol, you are signed up to speak again. Are you going to go ahead and take that spot? Okay. We have John Quick and Antoinette who are also speaking. So the backup speaker slot is available if someone wants to take it. And Graham, I have to ask you, are you still doing your off-the-cuff CC speeches, or you're done?
No, I've done all of those. I'm now doing a different CC this time. They're all travel related.
But not off the cuff?
No, not off the cuff.
Okay.
But I can do them off the cuff if you want one.
Huh? Well, you know, the way you put them together so fast, it's just fascinating for me. We do need 3 evaluators, a general evaluator and a topics master. So we have quite a few roles that we can start filling up. Other than that, we have about 2 minutes left. Are there any comments, questions? Roger.
Yes, one quick announcement. Jacinta and myself are working off of a small little project in promoting our club for the long term, not just the short term. In the next few weeks, if you do have some time, stay after the meeting and we'll go through a few questions in interview style. For example, what are some of the tips that you would give to somebody when they are trying to speak online versus in person? And so we'll record various answers from different people. We'll slice and dice the video and put them into a series of YouTube video. And you can imagine an intro of the question. There is some answer, and the outro would challenge and encourage people to come and join online Toastmasters for more practice, that kind of thing. So in the next few week meeting afterwards, if you have some time, stick around for 5-10 minutes. We'll do a quick interview, record it, then we have footages that we can slice and dice.
Okay, so this is after each meeting, Roger?
Yeah, after the meeting.
Okay, so Roger, I had sent something back to Jacinta. I guess you didn't see it. This might be also for someone's HPL that they might be able to jump in on this. And
sure.
It's
something like that I don't have to own it. Certainly, if you want to do it HPL,
well, we can ask the group. I will put that out there to see if anybody wants to help out on it. They don't necessarily have to do it all themselves because I think it's multiple people. But if someone is needing an HPL, this would be a great one that they can collaborate on. So just a thought, if you're at that stage and you're at level 5 and you need an HPL, this sounds like a great project to do. Thank you for taking the helm on this. It is always appreciated when Roger gets involved. We have missed you. And Rolando, we absolutely missed you too, Viviana. So it's nice to see some of you back. Let's see, that does it for me. It is exactly 9 o'clock. Oh, HPL, high performance leadership. So that is where you actually put together a longer project. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to adjourn this meeting, but if anybody would like to stay, we can go through what an HPL is and where you would need it. But this meeting itself is adjourned.
Thanks, great meeting.
Thank you. So Roger, you think Viviana's issue with the gray was the lighting or the background? I got kind of confused on that.
No, see what happened is, well, let me backtrack very quickly. All the green screen is doing, or the camera is doing is this. It recognizes a solid color and it will take away that color. It will eliminate that color. So for example, if I have a physical green screen, I actually holds up a green cup, well, the computer is going to eliminate that cup also. So when she moved back and forth, whenever you move, your lighting sources doesn't move along the way. So if the camera, the light was here versus here, now the distance is different. Your reflection from your face is different. Reflection from your clothes is going to be different. And also her curtain is not tied down. Her background, you can see the folding. And so when she moved, there's wind. So now the curtain is